Richard, Mr. Willie, Mr. Doherty,
Here.
Mr. Matthews, Mr. Davis, Mr. Manila, Mr. Drum, Mr. Randolph.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Announcements, phones and pagers, please turn your phones off or put them on vibrate. Same true with your pagers. Appeals, if you disagree with any decision this commission makes, you have the right to appeal it to the council. There are appeal cards over on the right, on the railing there. If you wish to speak on any item on the agenda, please get one of the speaker cards over there on to my right, fill it out, turn it into staff. They will get it up here to us. There will be a 10-minute time limit on each item on the agenda per side, okay? And there will be a 5-minute rebuttal. After the case is heard, please exit the building. Don't try and talk inside the chambers here. It is very disruptive, and if you go out in the lobby out there, it still reverberates back into the building here. Please rise for the invocation by Mr. Randolph and the pledge by Mr. Hand.
Gracious Father, once again, we stand before you with bowed down head, lifted hearts, say thank you. Thank you for allowing us to witness and experience another new year, 2015. Thank you for our families, our communities, our friends. And Lord, we thank you for this commission. We thank you for the citizens that we serve, as well as the parish, and allow us to make decisions that's in the best interest of all. And all these blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There was one item that was left off the agenda in error, which is the election of officers. We need to open the agenda and handle that item before we can go further down the agenda. Mr. Matthews.
Move to open the agenda for election of officers.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Matthews, seconded by Mr. Richard. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we have the chairman that needs to be elected, and we also have a vice chairman, and once the chairman is elected, he'll appoint a parliamentarian. Mr. Richard.
Mr. Chair, I would like to recommend and nominate Mr. Manella as our chair.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to nominate Mr. Manella as chair. Any other nominations? I'll close the nominations and ask you to please vote. Motion carries, electing Mr. Manella as chair. All right, we need a vice chairman. Mr. Richard.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Mr. Davis as vice chair.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to nominate Jimmy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Any other nominations?
Move the nominations be closed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close nominations. Please vote. Nomination, the vote is successful to close nominations, so we'll need a vote to elect Mr. Davis. Please vote. Computer's got a little bit cold. We're having to wait on it. All right. Mr. Davis is elected vice chairman. Mr. Manila, it's your baby now.
Mr. Manila, before you take the chair, I would like to congratulate and commend our now former chairman for exemplary job running this commission. You've done a great job, and we appreciate your service very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and it's been a pleasure serving the commissioners. So, Mr. Manoa? We'll swap.
Well, first, I'd like to thank the commission on your vote of confidence and echo Mr. Matthews' comment about Chairman Dowdy. He served us masterfully. I hope to be able to serve everyone as well as Dave has, and I think it's the will of this commission on a go-forward basis, given the leadership of all of the commissioners, is to rotate our officers so that we all have the ability to facilitate and to help to bring the commission together as Dave has done over the years. And I again thank everyone for their vote of confidence. As far as a parliamentarian, I would like to put up for a nomination of a parliamentarian, Mr. Matthews. He has a knowledge of Robert's Rules of Order. He also is a lawyer, and I think that would help to facilitate our process.
As a parliamentarian, that's your decision to make. We don't vote on that.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. And you are now the parliamentarian. With that being said, in our packets are the minutes of the November 5th, 2014 meeting, and I would like to have a motion or any corrections. Mr. Matthews?
Number 9 on the minutes for November is pretty convoluted, and I'm just not sure that this is exactly what happened. Our secretary says she went over the tape a couple of times, but I guess I'd like to have somebody else, myself, Mr. Chairman, somebody take another look at this, because as I remember, it was a very convoluted, very confusing part of our agenda. And I'd like to, again, postpone the minutes one more month so that we can have somebody take another look just to make sure that this, because it is very, very convoluted.
That's just the November minutes, Bill?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
So, Mr. Matthews, you'd like to make a motion to postpone for 1 month?
Yes.
And that has been seconded by Mr. Davis. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote. Motion to postpone carries. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of the December 2nd, 2014 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes is written.
Motion has been made by Mr. Matthews, seconded by Mr. Dougherty. Is there any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Staff, is there any recommendations for postponement of cases?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Number 1 on the agenda is EC 14-10093.
The reason for postponement recommendation?
At this time, we do not have any information concerning the owner. I don't know if they've been breached at this time, so we're going to request a table until we can speak to the owner of the property.
Mr. Hand, can you articulate what the process should be for notification of an owner in a case like this?
Yes, there needs to be, if the size of the parcel depends on the number of lots within the parcel and you have multiple owners, then you're required to have certified mail, but we need to determine who exactly are the owners in this case, and that hasn't been determined as yet. And I think that also number 3, Helen, there's been no notification by certified mail. The owner, we did identify the owner, but we haven't issued the certification yet. So number 3 is very similar also, and it needs to be postponed.
Thank you. So ZC 14-10-093, existing zoning, highway commercial 3, proposed zoning, A8 multifamily residential district, 11 acres. Petitioner is a parish council by motion of August the 7th, 2014. Parcels located on the west side of US Highway 11, north of Pine Place, south of Hunter Street, Ward 8, District 14. Is there anyone from the public that would wish to speak on the recommendation of postponement? Hearing none, I close it to the public. I bring it to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, this has been postponed, I understand, twice already.
Twice or 3 times?
Well, how many times can we postpone it? I think there's a rule that says we can only postpone it a number of times before it's automatically approved.
We can either postpone it indefinitely, and if we're able to reach the property owner or contact the property owner before next month, then we'll put it back on the agenda.
Okay, so I bring it to the commission for a recommendation or a motion.
Second.
Mr. Hand, do you think that we'll be able to contact or make contact, or should we postpone indefinitely?
That's fine if we can get the notification out. It's got to be 10-day certified mail. So long as we do the proper advertisement for next month, we can get it back on, even though it's postponed indefinitely. If we meet the legal requirements to get it back on for next month, we'll have it back on for next month.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Lauren and a second by Ms. Casabon to postpone this case. Is there any further discussion?
I'm still concerned that
Matthews.
this might automatically approve it.
Okay, your concern is noted. We have a motion and a second to postpone. I call for a vote.
Dave, is that gonna be indefinite or just for a month?
It's indefinite.
Okay?
That's the motion made. Please vote to postpone indefinitely. Motion carries. Any other cases?
Yes, case number 3, ZC 14-12-104, and it's the same reason as case number 1.
Move to postpone indefinitely.
One moment, please. Case is ZC 14-12-104. Existing zoning is I-4, Heavy Industrial District. Proposed zoning A4, Single Family Residential District. 49.21 acres. Petitioners, the Parish Council by motion of October 2nd, 2014. Parcel located on the east side of US Highway 11, south of Robert Road, north of Haas Road, Ward 8, District 14. Anyone from the public care to speak? Hearing none, I close to the public. I bring it to the commission. Ms. Casabon.
Motion to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Motion to postpone indefinitely, seconded by Mr. Randolph. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I ask for a vote. Motion to postpone carries.
Number 4 on the agenda, ZC 14-12-105, same reason as case number 1 and case number 3.
ZC 14-12-105, existing zoning, highway commercial 2, proposed zoning A4 single-family residential district, 4.93 acres. Petitioner, Parish Council by motion of October 2nd, 2014. parcel located on the north side of Ben Thompson Road, west of US Highway 11, Ward 9, District 14. Anyone from the public wish to speak? Hearing none, I close it to the public. I bring it to the commission. Ms. Casabon.
I'll defer.
Mr. Davis makes a motion to postpone indefinitely,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Randolph. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion carries.
Number 12 on the agenda, on the third page, ZC 15-01008, and Mr. Paul Marone is here to answer any questions you may have.
ZC 15-01-008, existing zoning A1 Suburban District, proposed zoning AT1 Animal Training Housing District, 6.061 acres. The petitioner is Jason Dalton. The owner is Scarlett Dalton, represented by Mr. Paul Marone. Parcel located on the north side of Louisiana Highway 1085, west of White Castle Road, being 14279 Louisiana Highway 1088, Covington, Ward 1, District 3. Mr. Marone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Marone on behalf of the Daltons, or the owners of the property. This is an existing facility that my clients are requesting to rezone, to bring the zoning into conformity with the facility that is there now. However, with the holidays, we have been in contact with some of the surrounding residents, but we were not able to meet with them, and we had told them that we would do that. And while there are some time-sensitive issues surrounding this, we have the ability to wait 30 days to be able to meet with them, discuss some of their concerns and some of the issues. So we would ask for your indulgence in delaying it for 30 days so that we have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to speak on this recommendation for postponement from staff? Hearing none, I would close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Mr. Randolph.
Move to postpone.
Second.
Motion to postpone, seconded by Mr. Matthews. Is there any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Staff, any other?
No other request.
Okay. Let's call your attention then to the second agenda item, ZC 06-06-047, a major amendment to the PUD Planned Unit Development Overlay, 191.97 acres. The petitioner, Aero Engineering and Consulting, Inc., the owner, Tantella Development Group, LLC. The parcel is located on the east side of Louisiana Highway 1077 and Tantella Ranch Road, north of McGee Road, Ward 1, District 3. Staff?
This is a request for a major amendment to the PUD. The original plan that was submitted to you a couple of months ago has been revised, showing a reduction of the number of single-family residential lots from 219 lots to 194 lots. And you can see in the chart below the lot size as well as the number of lots for each lot size. As originally proposed, the subdivision will have two accesses, one from Highway 1077 and one from Tantella Ranch Road. And also, as part of the original tentative approval, accesses to the lots of records located along 1077 and Tantella Ranch Road will be provided from the interior of the subdivision. The revised plan submitted is definitely an improvement upon the previous major amendment plan submitted in regards to meeting the objectives of the PUD. The environmentally sensitive design of the subdivision allows for the preservation of most of the wetlands located on the site. Moreover, a variety of housing is now being proposed, allowing for a greater choice of type of living units. Finally, the density of the Tantella subdivision is proposed to be a .768 lot per acre, which remains a concern, recognizing the fact that the site is mostly surrounded by undeveloped land zone A1. However, the density of the proposed revised PUD is lower than the density of the approved subdivision PUDs located in proximity. And for those reasons, staff would like to recommend approval of the major amendment to the PUD.
Thank you. Is the petitioner, anyone representing the petitioner here?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Bruno. It's been a while since I've been here, but I think some of you all are familiar with our body of work. And just to take a minute or two, just to refresh your memory, or if you haven't met me or seen me before, I am the managing partner and president of Bruno Brothers Management and Development Company. We are very proud of the work that we have done, especially in St. Tammany Parish and throughout the Gulf Coast of Louisiana. We are responsible for the Global Star Building, which is a Class A office building, which has attracted one of the finest corporations in the United States from California to relocate here. Through our work, we have created hundreds of high-paying jobs through our shopping centers and other developments. We own the Main Street Shopping Center in Slidell, and we have a major upgrade of that center. It's one of the finest centers in Slidell. I am currently in the Madisonville Marketplace Shopping Center in the Madisonville Goodby area, and we have a absolutely beautiful center which is of tremendous convenience to the neighborhood, very well used, and very popular. I am also a resident of the parish and have raised my children here for the last 15 years. Our company has grown quite dramatically, and the reason we've grown is because we have a reputation for quality work. I think that if you're going to judge a man's project, you look at where he came from and what he's done. In addition to that, although we don't like to draw attention to ourselves for our charitable work, without the Bruno family, the Coke Heel playground would not be here today, and that was just based on the largesse and good wishes of our family. And for Floyd Glass actually asked us to sell that to the parish at a dramatically reduced rate. When we realized that we could have gotten $50,000 an acre, we might have changed our mind, but anyway, that's a long time ago. So with that said, it's now time to talk about this particular development. This piece of property was purchased many years ago, and in 2006, a PUD was drawn up, and I'll be quite honest with you, we really had no clue and no idea what we were doing at that particular time, and we have certainly come to our senses since that time. I think a lot of this could have been avoided had unfortunately, I was asleep at the wheel when they had the major rezoning. I had a little cancer issue I had to clear up, kept me out of business for a couple of years and kind of slipped by. So this thing has been sitting since 2006 at 127 units. And you may ask yourself, well, they're going from 127 to 190 some or whatever. But I assume all of you have had a chance to look at this, this is really going to be a jewel for the parish. We are so proud to actually put into play the recommendations of the famous gentleman you brought down here some years ago, Mr. Duane, whose theory in developing subdivisions was what you need to do is you need to have more density and closeness of living and more general space around it. So what we've done, I think, is unprecedented in this parish. 65% of this tremendously large acre tract is going to remain as God created it, and it will never be changed. We're in negotiation with the Louisiana Land Trust to give that to the Land Trust. So how lovely will it be for the people in this neighborhood to live surrounded by a forest that will not be touched as long as we're in control of this land here. You know, as long as the good old USA is still standing, which we all know will be forever. So I echo Helen's comments. We've had a lot of back and forths. It was a learning curve for us, I'll admit. We have met with the neighbors as asked on 10, maybe more occasions, and we've had some very spirited discussions, and quite frankly, we've also made some good friends. We have a couple of enemies, but we still got some good friends. And as Abraham Lincoln said, folks, you're not going to please all the people all the time, but I think we've pleased most of the people this time. We have bent over backwards to listen to the neighbors because, look, I live here. I've been through what all of us have been through. I live on Highway 1085. I mean, you know, I know what it's like, the traffic. Do I cry and moan every time I leave my driveway? No, not really. I love it here. You know, I have to wait at the red light for a few minutes. Well, we're going to have a traffic circle there on 1077 and 1085 in some time in our lifetime, but I know we will. So that's just the way it is. And so we kind of roll with the punches, and we love our parish, and we do everything that we can to preserve it. So I really want to kind of step back from this project and really hear if you have any questions, because I've exhausted everything that everybody's asked me to do. You know, Helen and Sydney, we met with Red, we met with Pat Brister, we met with everybody. We met with the Cozy Lane folks. Let me mention that. Years ago, I don't know what, the first person that owned this particular property thought he was going to get back at the parish, and as you know, he went ahead and through some quirk of zoning, was able to get lots all spilling out onto 1077 and Tantilla. Each one of these lots has the right to access 1077, which is, as you know, a virtual nightmare on a state highway. Well, we didn't think very much of it, but Kevin Davis and Marty Dean at the particular time called me over and over again. Robert, can you help me? I said, look, whatever I need to do, I will do. So he asked me to give them right away so they could build a road, Cozy Lane, so that those folks could have access and then they could get out on Tantilla, because they couldn't get out on Tantilla and they couldn't go into the property because it was forest land. So anyway, it really is a charming little street. And a lot of the discussion tonight has been with those people because they are going to be the ones most impacted by this development. Their concern was they were required to build larger houses than they really could afford or wanted to at a particular time and have it up to a certain standard, and they wanted very naturally to preserve that, and I certainly agree to that. I mean, I certainly can understand that. That's your castle. So what we did in order to satisfy them is, and let me take a step back. What we did in this subdivision, which you really have to take into consideration, is we're donating to the parish the right-of-way all along the frontage on the back of all those lots, so that now a road can be built and all of those people can now access that road and they can go out of the subdivision onto 1077. Think of the nightmare that we've solved there. Now, if this thing doesn't get built or for some whatever reason it just sits there, you've got a ticking time bomb on your hand. But we're happy to do it. We were very happy to do it. We had to work with Helen. She kind of showed us how to, what would work. Sydney and Helen worked up a nice plan for it. So anyway, back to the folks on Cozy. We had our final meeting yesterday, and they said, look, Robert, can you do something for us on the lot size? You got 80-foot lots, and ours are, they're long, but they're 120 feet. So what we said was, tell you what I'm going to do. We'll take lots 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which are 5 lots. We'll collapse those into 4 lots. We'll add 20 feet to each of those lots, and now you're going to have 100-foot frontage on the front of all those lots. So it's going to be 100 by 130. Hopefully we're going to hear from our folks. Nods. They're satisfied with that, and we assured them that we are going to build those houses, or somebody we may even keep those out of the deal. But we promised them, our word is our bond, that that particular street is going to remain a very, a little higher end area. And so we were happy to do it. It's not like I want to be, big pat on the back. It was a great suggestion by them. I just wasn't smart enough to figure it out at the time. So if you have any technical questions, our engineer, Mr. Fusell, is here. Been very enjoyable working with him for the first time. I look forward to working with him again in the future. And with that said, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bruno.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this project? And I would also ask Mr. Bruno, if you haven't, to fill out a speaker's card. Thank you.
For the record, my name's Dave Dupleshane. I live on Cozy Lane with 3 other houses. There's 4 houses that's on the lot, that's on the property there. Mr. Bruno is right as far as, you know, having discussions. There's 3 essential elements to having a good discussion. That's debate, dialogue, and discussion, to have a good communication. And he certainly has fulfilled those 3 criteria in order to sit down with us and figure out what our concerns were and to address them. You know, is it going to be a perfect world that we live in? No. I mean, we've made a lot of concessions. He certainly has made some. My biggest concern, and you know, everybody else's concern, was going to be the quality of the construction. And, you know, as long as the quality of construction stays higher than substandard or average grade, I think it'll bring some class to the neighborhood. You know, what currently exists now. It's a hodgepodge of properties and construction back there. We welcome it with the concessions, and thanks, Mr. Bruno, for making the concessions. That's it.
Thank you. And if you haven't, please fill out a speaker card as well. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of this? Anyone wish to speak in opposition? Please come to the podium, state your name, and if you haven't, fill out a speaker card.
Oh, I will. Okay, John Martin, Goodby Civic Association. One, I want to agree with Mr. Bruno. He has done a very good job of trying to get into here. He's done a lot of nice things. He's taken this wetland area and he's moved all the houses. And if you don't mind, can I ask one of y'all to I made some colored things so y'all, can see. The green is the dry land. And Mr. Bruno has done a very good job of getting out of the wetlands and bringing everything into the dry lands, okay? So that we don't have mitigation. That does 2 things. One, as he says, he's going to put the wetlands, all the remaining wetlands, into a trust in perpetuity so that the wetlands will stay there forever. 2, it does help him a little bit because he doesn't have to mitigate wetlands. But the main thing is that there are a lot of good things with the subdivision that he has there. There are some things that we think should be done and we're concerned about. The 2 things that we had to do as a civic association was, 1, take care of the people that were already there. And they have done that themselves. They have met with Mr. Bruno numerous times. They already had 4 houses there, and now we're changing the PUD. So they're sort of hanging, wondering what's going to happen to them. And they have done a good job, and Mr. Bruno has done a good job working with them. The second thing is we have to take care of everybody in the area. When you look at his diagram here, what he's done, his plot, our concern is that everything is north of the entryway onto 1077. That's where most of the land is anyway. But the idea that people are going to dump out onto Tantella is our concern. Tantella is not 1077. All the traffic is coming from north to south in the morning, at least most of it, north to south. And if I was in that subdivision, I would take Tantella and get out from Tantella and flow into the traffic and not have to take 1077, not have to take the entryway into 1077, because now those people are taking the traffic going north to south, plus the ones that have gotten off of Tantella. So I think we're going to have a problem on the little Tantella street trying to get people off of there, and I think they can do some things with the subdivision to encourage people to go out 1077. There is a little green area that's not being used, and if you look all the way on the north, there are 16 homes there that are in the wetlands. Perhaps those 16 homes could be moved onto that very south green spot, which would stop mitigation on some of those, and encourage people to use the 1077 exit. I'm just concerned about the traffic getting out of that onto Tantella. The other thing is, if you look right in the middle of that south section there, there's a triangular lot. There's a triangular place between lots 33, 39. It's a dead space in the middle of the subdivision. You see the little triangular piece there? It's blocked in by houses. Now, who's going to cut that? If it's wetlands and nobody can get in to cut it, and what's going to happen to that area? That's going to be a good breeding place if it's wet for mosquitoes, West Nile, snakes, whatever. I've had 2 of my dogs bitten by moccasins on my property. So they're there, and they like wet areas. If it's not, if it's just dry land, and that's what's going to be done with it, because you can do that on wetlands without, as long as you don't plant anything, you can do that. If it's that kind of land, then why don't we take one of those lots that are in wetlands, 33 for instance, take it away and give place for people to go into there where kids can play, the lot can be maintained, and it's not going to be a wild-looking place in the middle of the subdivision. So there's some tweaks that can be done with that subdivision still. I think some work still needs to be done with it. The other thing are the garden homes. The garden homes are 50-foot lots. They're 10 foot in the front, 5 foot in the back. The rules of the subdivision is you cannot park your car in the street, okay? Now, you got a 50-foot lot. You can't park it in 10 feet. My wife has a Mini Cooper. That's 14 feet long. That can't park in a driveway, okay? So you're going to have to put a garage, which is 12 feet. So you got 3 feet on either side of the house, that's 6. You got 12 feet, that's 18. You're going to take that away from your 50-foot lot. That's what you're going to have to do with every one of those garden homes to follow the rules of the subdivision. And if you have 2 cars or you have company, you really have a problem. So I think this needs to be redesigned, these garden homes. My suggestion would be to put a gravel road to extend the lots, put a little gravel road, put a garage in the back with maybe a shed for a second car or a guest, and that way when you look down that street, you don't have car after car after car after car after car, because that's what you're going to have to do in those garden homes, okay? It's not a good design with that. You need something else. The detention areas, I think y'all have to take over the detention areas after the subdivision is settled. And right now, there's no way to get to them. And I think they need some sort of road, something, a gravel road, something like that, to get to detention areas so that they can be maintained. We've run into this problem numerous times with subdivisions where they had a detention area in the middle of a subdivision, but it was totally surrounded by houses, and nobody could get in to do any sort of work in them. So I think you need to look at that. All in all, once again, I think Mr. Bruno's done a good job. I have a problem. The people in the area, the big problem that we're fighting is 6-8 years ago, we went through the same PUD, not this PUD, but the original PUD. They started out with 240 homes. Everybody on this panel and the council felt like 240 homes was too much. And they told the gentleman that he had to go down to 127 homes because that's what the infrastructure would support at the time. All right? If any of y'all can tell me what improvement we've made in the infrastructure, I would like to know it. There's been none. Okay? We've added more houses. We're being smothered out there. The original approved PUD was 127 homes, from 140 to 127. Why are we going up to 191? That's a big jump, okay? That's a lot of traffic. Why don't we, I would like to settle someplace in between to give Mr. Bruno, because I think he's doing a good job at his initial subdivision. Maybe 150 homes, something. But I cannot see going up to 191 homes when there's no infrastructure improvement, where the traffic is worse. Vidico is coming online, which is going to be like 200-something homes. They're already approved. They're going to come online. So now we're going to be adding 400-something houses in that small area, Vidico and this particular subdivision. Okay, that's it. Do y'all have any questions, gentlemen, of anything I've said? Main thing is we're having trouble just jumping from 127 to 191. There's little tweaks that they can do in a subdivision that I think would make it a nicer subdivision for people. But I have problem with the big jump, and we don't mind working somewhere in between, but I think that's too big a jump. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? You have about a minute, 30 seconds remaining.
My name is Gordon Philibert. I was the original developer of that land, and I sold to Mr. Bruno. I definitely think he's doing a good job trying to get the development to flow well. The issues that I have with it, and I definitely support his right to develop the property in the way he sees fit, the size of the lots. Times have changed, economics have changed, but the thing that I have an issue with is the road that empties onto Tantella. Tantella just cannot support potentially 200 to 400 cars a day every morning or every evening emptying out onto Tantella, and the density. When I originally went to develop the property, it was, again, 240 lots or whatever. Finally was reduced to 127. So I was told that that was the least amount that would be, or the most amount that would be acceptable. And there's just nothing in the infrastructure. There's nothing that's changed except for increased density, increased people moving to the area to support warranting an additional 60, 80 houses, whatever it is. That's about all I have to say.
Thank you. If you would, please fill out a speaker card as well. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? So you have 30 seconds remaining before rebuttals, but if you do, please come to the podium, state your name. I will not address you from the audience.
My name is Earl Wilson. I live in Goodby on Wilson Lane, and I don't have enough time to really do too much other than what I've just said right now, but during the rebuttal time, will I be able to speak then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Anyone care to rebut the opposition? If so, you have 5 minutes in which to do so. Mr. Bruno?
Well, technically, as a lawyer, if he wants to rebut something, you got to have something to rebut that's been said by him or someone else. So, parliamentarian, you can address that one, because what it does is it doesn't give you a chance to respond to what he says, right? It's like, who's the last guy going to get to talk? But with that said, I'll not be pedantic. Like I said, you're not going to please everybody all the time. For Dr. Davis, who is a lovely man, and his wife is even more lovely. Anyway, I admire what he does. I mean, he's taken his time, and he is working on these subdivisions. I mean, his spare time. And he's going over them, and he's got his magnifying glass in there. But I'll tell you, for Dr. Davis to comment on the layout, Martin, sorry. I don't know why that won't get, anyway, maybe after I drink that bottle of wine you gave me. It's with Dr. Martin commenting on the details of a subdivision is like me telling you how to birth a calf. I'm not a vet. I wouldn't plan on being a vet. He's not an engineer. He's not a designer. He's not a traffic engineer. Helen would tell you if there is going to be this subdivision has no effect on traffic. Okay, it's just zero. All right. So all this about flooding on ever, and all this about too many people. Have you ever looked at Google Earth in this area? The thousands of acres out there that we're going to have to deal with in the future? Hopefully we'll get some roads. Look, these are problems that were made long before we came here. Tantilla, of course, needs to be improved, I think Red's going to have to sit down there and do some horse trading, and they're going to have to improve Tantilla. It just, look at what's next to it. They have 2 lots per acre. This is less than 1 lot per acre. And, with all due respect, to say that what have we done on infrastructure? We've reduced the infrastructure by 40%. We've reduced the footprint to a third of or even less than a third of the entire area. So clearly we've reduced the infrastructure needed. There won't be any more roads. There won't be tar. There won't be drainage. It'll all be in a nice compact area with some very lovely homes. It's the perfect way to develop the subdivision. So, you know, I hope, you know, look, I respect anybody's right to speak, especially when something's going to happen in your neighborhood. You know, I don't take that lightly. Believe me, I really don't. You know, my neighbor next door to me, she's got a 25-acre parcel, and they put Del Sol. They got about 250 houses next to her, okay? Poor thing, what could she do? Nothing, all right? This is well thought out, well planned, terrific engineer, great neighbors. We can't please everybody, but we're doing our best. It's going to be a credit to the neighborhood. And I really would ask you all, if you really have any serious doubts or questions, to ask me and give me a chance to respond. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Opposition?
I'm Daryl with Arrow Engineering, and just like to rebut a few of the things, not to get into great detail because this is a tentative plan, but the access will be provided to the detention areas. We have open spaces like between lots 53 and 52 where we'll be able to get there, and those detention areas are just shown that there will be 2 detention areas in this thing, and we'll show the exact design of those in the preliminary. The areas that he's speaking of, the triangular area, one could argue that if that wasn't cut at all and it was just woods, that'd be a great feature for those lots that are would have that to the rear, because they'd have no rear neighbor, and that's real nice. And but we can always, in the preliminary, provide right-of-ways and sidewalks to some of these areas. That's just, but there's nothing that was said that would change this tentative plat, and so we ask you to approve it.
Thank you. If you haven't, please fill out a speaker card. Anyone wish to speak in rebuttal of the opposition? Please come forward.
I'm the opposition, right?
Correct. You have 5 minutes.
Just want to make sure. All right. Now, I'm with the rest of my people here from Goodby. A lot of respect from me personally to Mr. Bruno. He's done an outstanding job. He's taken a project on that he's never done before, and he's bought a piece of property that was already approved as a PUD for 127 home sites. And I'd have no problem, along with the rest of Goodby, to let him start moving dirt tomorrow. It wouldn't make any difference to us at all. We'd love to have the original design. The original design was more in line with what the PUD ordinance is all about. And I'm going to read you just to let you know what it says on a purpose only. I'm not going deep into it. But it says the purpose of a planned unit development is to encourage flexibility in the development. I think he's done that. Creative design. I question the design. Although I'm sure a lot of people would agree with the design. More orderly development and to promote and preserve the scenic features of the site. That's the purpose of a PUD. Now, if you look at the layout of this particular development that is being proposed, it's not 127 homes. It's more like, I think 80 some odd lots are one size, I think 80 foot wide. I think another 80 some odd are 60 foot wide. Then we have a number of garden homes in here. I don't even know what their measurements are, but from the map or the layout, it's mighty small looking. You're going from 127 homes that was approved by you guys that were here at that time you're moving it up to 67 more home sites, from 127 to 67. Now, that's almost 50% increase in lots. Now, 194 is just a little bit too much, okay? And I agree with Mr. Bruno that he's given and he's taken. And of course, he's just a businessman. I respect him as a businessman, and he wants to make, of course, the money that he wants to make on this project. And I'm all for good development. I'm saying that with a little more give and take, I think this development can be improved. I think it's too many lots. I do. The organization, the association in Goodby. The concern that we have also is the Cozy Lane people over here. The Cozy Lane people have negotiated apparently in good faith, along with the good faith of Mr. Bruno, and have reached some agreement. I think we still can do that with the rest of the development. This development, if you look at it, I'm sure you've seen cookie cutter subdivisions. And that's what this resembles to some extent. It's like a cookie cutter subdivision. Same thing over and over and over. So I would say, you know, you could change a few things, lower the numbers in regards to like the wetlands that Dr. Martin had mentioned. You can, you know, renegotiate a little more with the citizens in that community, which is approximately maybe 2,000, 2,500 people. And if you don't believe me, go down to the corner of 190 and 1077 in the morning between 7:30 and 9 o'clock, and you will see a mile of cars going north. And you continue now to 1077 and 1085 where Mr. Bruno lives, and you got the same problem. So we put another 200 and some odd cars on the road, along with what already has been approved on PUDs, and we haven't got all those PUDs built out yet. And I'll just show you this right here if you want to pass it around. The purple here is PUDs that have been approved already by the commission. You put all these home sites together, and all of a sudden, you are increasing the number of cars going to that intersection there that everybody that lives in Goodby has to go through, somewhere around 2,000 more cars. Now, we've got to have some relief somehow, somewhere. We've got to get that circle done. That circle was talked about back, I'd say, maybe 12 years ago. It was proposed, so that's a long time ago. How much time do we have left,
30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay. I'm going to give that to Mr. Bruno if you want to rebut this, okay? Sure. You want to pass that around and let them just take a look at it? Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Bruno, Mr. Bruno.
Not a problem. I want to talk to you before. I didn't get a chance to.
Just quick.
No, wait a second, Mr. Bruno. Your time has expired. Now, what will now happen, is I will ask the commission, if the commission would like to make a motion to suspend the rules. It's not my decision, it is the commission's decision to suspend the rules to give you an opportunity of more time. But that's the commission's will.
I'll make a motion to extend the time of discussion.
Motion made by Mr. Davis.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Richard to suspend the rules to provide Mr. Bruno and equal time to the opposition to suspend the rules and give them, Mr. Davis, how much more time would you like? Another 5 minutes? Another 5 minutes. Motion made, seconded. Please vote. Motion carries that we will extend both sides 5 additional minutes. Thank you. Mr. Bruno.
Facts are facts. The setbacks for the garden homes are 20 feet, not 10 feet. But, you know, 10 times we met, 10 times. We talked to everybody, okay? I mean, I'm just not that good of a negotiator. I can't convince everybody. But I got to tell you, a lot of the 99.9% of the problems that they brought up have nothing to do with us. I mean, it's not us. We're trying to solve a problem here, okay? And to say that a third is 50%, then that's some fuzzy math. I remember somebody in the debate some time ago, you know, we're talking about adding a third of the houses, and we're hoping there'll be retirees. We're hoping that there's not going to be a lot of traffic in and out. But but the bottom line is, look, we got to go on facts, okay? There's no traffic engineer said Helen would have been on me like white on rice if there was any additional traffic issues here. So, you know, I guess we could go on back and forth all day because you're not going to satisfy everybody. But I'll tell you one thing I did do. I read that PUD ordinance line by line, and there is not one line in that PUD ordinance that talks about house size, okay? But we all know that people are tired of the McMansions, and they want a nice, charming house. Does a small house mean a dumpy house? I beg to differ. You know, just go look at the one on 1085. I forgot the name of it. Most beautiful houses in West St. Tammany. Of course, you could put your arm out and touch your neighbor if you really want to, but you know, it's not my idea of country living. But this is not going to be like that. So because these houses are a little smaller, doesn't mean they're going to be not. This is going to be a very nice subdivision. And we're going to have to get a decent price for these lots if we're going to get out of this with our shirts. I mean, how many people can afford to give up 65% of their land to green space? So, again, I appreciate the comments. I really do, and I appreciate the pain of traffic. But traffic is going to be the way it is in St. Tammany for a little while. We're all going to pull together. We're going to solve the problems, and it's going to continue to be a great place to live. Thank you all for giving me additional time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno.
Is it my turn?
Yes, sir.
You know, when I sat in these seats for many years. Now, I was a commissioner back a long time ago, but a lot more, I think, responsibility is put on your shoulders because of the fact that we're growing so fast again. Big responsibility. I know they overpay you guys and ladies too, and I know you most probably use your gasoline and you don't even, you know, try to get it back. If you had to visit every location. Anyway, to go back into just two things, okay? One of the things that we did when I was on the commission, we always asked the same basic question. Martha, you can vouch for this. One of the things that we always ask, is there a compelling reason to approve or disapprove this project? A compelling reason. What is the reason behind this subdivision in the 194 home sites? Anybody know a compelling reason? Bruno? Mr. Bruno? Sure. Yeah. You want to make money or what?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Please address the commission.
I'm sorry.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. Anyway, that's a major question you got to ask yourself. What is a compelling reason to approve or disapprove this project? I hope you keep that in mind when you make a decision. The other thing is that when I mentioned the fact that it's a subdivision with cookie-cutter appearances, that wasn't derogatory towards what they're developing. It's just a fact of the matter that a PUD is not designed like that. If you look at all your PUDs that you have approved, including the original approved 127 home sites here, you'll see serpentine streets, you'll see all type of amenities that have been put into it. So this looks like a subdivision to me and to the rest of our community. And if it's a subdivision, then that's what y'all should approve, a subdivision, not a PUD. And you don't take advantage of certain things that PUDs give you. So, keep that in mind also. It's like taking a round peg and putting it to a square hole. Okay, thanks. You want to talk? Take the rest of my time if you want.
Thank you. Anyone else care to rebut in opposition? Please approach the podium, state your name, and if you haven't, fill out a speaker card, please.
Look, there's an issue here that I don't think none of us has talked about. I've lived out there for a few years. I was here in '84, and I'm sure these are probably going to be all slab houses. They're all going to flood. Now, everybody up here knows this. That land out there cannot take, people are going to buy these slab houses with absolutely no clue. They're going to think that slab house is setting up on top of a mountain over there. They're going to hear what flood level it is and all this and the other, but 80% of them people are not going to have a clue. If these are slab houses out there, they're going under. And it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. I've seen that river come up in there, and Mr. John Martin here, he lives out there too, and some of these other people. But there's people out here on slab houses that are going to go underwater. period. They're going under. That land's not the same. All this land in St. Tammany Parish is not the same. And to think that the land over here in this subdivision is the same as this subdivision over there is absolute nonsense. If those are not on poles, they're going to go underwater. That water can get 3 foot deep there, 4 foot deep. What was it in '84? I mean, I don't know how many of y'all were here in '84. I remember Covington went under. It went over the bridge in Covington and went up into the half of Covington up in there. The Goodby Quick Stop store had 4 foot of water in it. I know Goodby Quick Stop store had 4 foot in it. Many people told me it had 4 foot of water in it. So when this is all said and done, and I'm gonna have a lot of enemies, when it's all said and done, them houses are gonna go underwater. If they're on slabs and they're not up, they're going underwater. All of them. And I know that's probably a lot of people have already heard all that, but I'm just making sure that it's clear to everybody in here. That's all going under. All them houses are gonna flood, all of them. That's funny, but it's not funny for the people who live in them houses. Somebody lives in a house and it goes underwater, they're not gonna be laughing.
I don't think anyone takes flooding
Well, I know,
or any
I
other
just heard
catastrophe
a
as funny.
snicker in here somewhere, I don't know where I heard it. They're going under, they will. I've seen it, man, I've seen that river come up in there with vengeance. Not much less the ditches all come out of the ditches, come out onto the streets.
I think your point is taken regarding flooding.
Okay.
Thank you. Please fill out a speaker card. 30 seconds remaining on, yes, sir.
I meant to say something at the end. Just as a simple recommendation, my recommendation with myself and I hope the rest of Goodby here is to table this one more time, gives us a chance to talk a little give and take and find some middle ground. I think Mr. Bruno's an honorable man, and I'm sure he'll be willing to sit down with us and talk in detail again. I know he said 10 different times you've met, but by the same token, he's only met twice with the association. So, thank you.
Ms. Casabon?
Is it time for us to discuss?
Well, I'm closing it to the public and bringing it back to the commission.
Go.
Ms. Casabon?
You want me to discuss it? I mean,
Your light's
well,
on,
his
so.
is too. Okay.
Okay, well, I recognized you first. Would you, no?
Well,
Mr. Lauren?
My only point I'm trying to make, Dave, is this is a zoning commission meeting, not the planning commission meeting.
Correct.
And a lot of the things that we've talked about here tonight, flooding, traffic, all of those things have to be discussed rightfully in the planning commission, not in the zoning commission.
Correct.
You know, I just think we're getting the cart before the horse a little bit, to a degree.
All right, I'm ready.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, I'd like to talk to Mr. Bruno, please. This map that was given to us with the, I guess your tentative plan for where the homes are gonna be, the green sections, is that wetlands? That's the wetland sections?
No, that's dry.
That's the dry area, thank you, because that was concerning me
Oh, yeah.
at first.
Yeah, we're
I
not-
was saying, when you were just saying about, it was, well, I do appreciate you putting most of the homes in the dry areas. Actually, what I see from this is only really 28 lots that actually have wetlands on it, according to this mapping. Question is, again, you come from 127 lots to 194 lots. I understand that. And your density, what was the original density? I see here you had the density now is 0.76 lots per acre. What was the original density that we agreed, that we approved and on the PUD? It's not written here.
I got it over there. I know the green space was 125 acres and now it's 165 acres. So we're increasing the green space by 40 acres.
Okay, but
Yeah, I know.
this 0.76 lot per acre, you're including the size of the green space in that total summation too, correct? the .76 lots per acre, you're including based on the green space of that too as well, right? Right. So I'm just asking, what was the initial density of the 127 lots that you had PUD before? I just want to see, compare the actual, is there an increase in density? Because you can have an increase of lots and not an increase of density if you go ahead and make things different. So I'm just wanting to see.
Yeah, it was an increase.
It's an increase.
Does staff have any information on that? By any chance?
What is your question exactly, sir?
.17.
What was it?
.17 increase.
.7?
17. .17.
Went up from approximately a 50% lot to acre ratio to 67 lot to acre ratio.
No, that can't be right.
127 You got 127 lots on 225 acres. That was right about 50%, counting the 10 5-acre lots, which is 252 acres. So you increased probably 0.17% in terms of density.
And this, in the flood, I see the majority of the properties are in flood zone A. That means none, any of these houses will be raised?
No,
They'll be raised to base flood as per the requirements.
but actually,
in
now,
terms of building.
I'm sorry, where are you getting that from?
No,
Flood zone A?
I'm just getting it right from our documentation that we have.
I know, show me where that is.
I have the final density of the subdivision is proposed to be .76.
No, not the density, the flood zone.
Oh. The flood zone, yeah, flood zone A is the majority of the property. Flood.
That's correct.
Right, flood zone A is the majority of the property. You only basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You only have 10 lots are in flood zone B, according to this chart.
That is correct.
Right.
The,
What's that?
I don't think that's, well, I see where you're saying flood zone A and flood zone B, I see that. But I think that has to be confirmed because I know I've spoken with Paul Carroll, even though this is tentative, once again, it's not the planning commission.
No, this is zoning.
I mean, this is zoning, it's not even tentative, but I don't think that's actually true, that the flood zone, because in discussions that we had, because we talked about cut fill, I know what you're saying, I mean, this is my map, I mean, my
Right.
road, but I don't think that's the case. But,
Point of order on that. I live right across the street.
Excuse me, point of order is correct. The gentlemen that are at the podium can address the commission. At such time that someone has a question for you, Dr. Martin, they will address you from the commission.
yeah.
Thank
But I
you.
mean, the homes will be built where they need to, you know.
And I do appreciate you trying to put it there. Well, I was just wondering, in flood zone A, the majority of the subdivision in flood zone A, do you believe these things will be on slabs?
Absolutely.
And you've already received your wetlands permit?
That's in the packet, if you look in the back.
I see a letter.
It's a
I see a letter in
jurisdiction.
2006
It's
saying
submitted.
you'll have to obtain a wetlands permit.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you don't have a wetlands permit as of yet?
We wouldn't,
No.
it wouldn't have made any sense to apply for a wetlands permit if we didn't know what was
Right,
going to
but
be allowed.
then again, if we approve this, you may not be denied the wetlands
Correct.
permit. So you're
And then-
basically doing this all on speculation.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Davis. No, Ms. Casbon, excuse me.
All right, I had to hear what everybody else had to say. I guess this is concerning staff, and it looks like I have the original 127 lots that we debated and talked about over 5 or 6 years ago, that when this was approved, and it was because of the drainage, and we felt that the density was more appropriate at 127 than what is now. We keep talking about the 197, and then he's lowered it. But the density is what concerns me the most. And Helen, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I am, if we approve these 197 or 100 and whatever, the lots now, and does this go straight to preliminary without reviewing another traffic study? Including these extra lots?
I mean, this is something that's gonna have to be determined. I can't answer that question. It's
If we
with the
approve
increase-
these extra
with-
lots tonight,
I understand.
it goes straight to preliminary?
I understand your question. However, I cannot answer the question as far as if it's not gonna require another traffic study.
But if we, this is the, to me, this is where we get caught uninformed and not enough information is when,
But
this is a tremendous number of houses to me that we're adding. Since we did this 5 years ago, we have multiple PUDs, one right across the street and on that same road, and that is being developed. So it's just,
If I'm not mistaken, because the traffic study could have potentially been done in 2006 or 2007, it's possible that it would be considered as being expired because of, the addition of constructions.
correct. But I guess
So-
it's at tentative is when we do the traffic study, correct? That we base our information on, is this feasible? I mean, is it going to be able, I don't doubt these homes are beautiful and stuff, but part of our job is to make sure they can get home to them, in a reasonable manner and time. And because of the density, the added density, not only in this subdivision, but in that whole area, that we don't have something we could plug in and say, okay, the track, like we do the drainage, like this many more houses are being developed on this road, how is that going to affect them? Unless we do some kind of study. And so that's one of the problems I have, that not necessarily, it's the number that we're adding, and also if the number of driveways, how many have been, I know that we went in and took some out later because of the number that had been put in and that sort of thing.
Well, we have
The
to
flooding, because of the density, the flooding issues there, I know that doesn't come into preliminary, but I'm almost like, this is such a major amendment, and it's such an area that we've had problems with the drainage. And I do know when we put in subdivisions, it usually alleviates a lot of the drainage and stuff, but we don't have any information to base this on, because we don't know how the traffic's gonna flow and how this is gonna affect the extra people around there.
Well, and I understand your point. However, as previously stated, traffic is not addressed at the zoning level. However, we have to recognize that the traffic study was done more than 5 years ago, and now the area
How
have
can we find
changed.
that? I mean, will we know? You have to look that up, I know, but who has that information?
Well, I will have to talk to our traffic engineer and talk to Mr. Keller, the planning commission.
To be able to give us more information.
And Mr. Fontenot.
I can't support this with I know how hard we worked to get these lots to fit in, like I said, over 5 years ago. That, and where the area has changed. I can't support the number of additional lots.
Mr. Matthews?
Yeah, Martha, you're going to be a little surprised, but I can agree with you completely. We're adding 67 more homes. I heard an interesting comment earlier that this entire subdivision will have zero effect on traffic. we're going to be putting probably 400 cars each morning and each afternoon, plus a number of school buses coming out of Cozy Lane and, what is it, White Oak Drive onto 1077. I can't in my wildest dream imagine that that's going to have zero effect on traffic. Whether it's going to have a seriously negative effect on traffic, I don't know until we get a new traffic study. As I understand, what we're looking at here tonight, Helen, would you correct me if I'm wrong, because I may well be, is only the number of lots per this PUD and the basic layout. Is that correct? That's what we're to vote on tonight?
Yes, everything that is listed under the PUD regulation.
Okay. We're not looking into where the green spaces are.
Yes, you can, yes.
We
it's
do?
part- Yes.
Okay, so the fact that we have a little triangular green space that is totally inaccessible could be a problem. Your comments about the walking path should be connected to Blue Jay Drive, that's also a problem. I think we need to find out before we approve 194 lots, a jump of 67 lots. I think we ought to get some more information from staff, what the traffic effect could be or would be. I think this is not worrying about a square peg in a round hole, but we're trying to put a size 12 foot into a size 9 shoe.
But Mr. Matthews, with all due respect, I can bring you an answer as far as if a traffic study will be required. However,
Oh, I
I will
understand.
not be
No, no.
able to answer. I just gave a copy of the.
I was going to read that.
Okay.
May I?
Please, wait, one second. You want to enter something into the record,
Yes.
Martha?
This is what I was, Helen said this may answer our questions, is from the Department of Engineering, that they state that some changes are needed in the traffic impact, the TIA. At this time, the study shows that the intersection of Highway 190 and 1077 will be in need of improvements, both with and without the development, talking about the Tentella Ranch. The St. Tammany Parish is currently identifying the improvements are necessary and will implement these improvements. Impact fees from this project, as well as other developments in the area, are being utilized to perform these improvements. So the study shows that once the parish's ongoing improvements in the intersection of 1085 and Highway 1077 and Highway 1077 at I-12 are in place, these intersections will operate at an acceptable level of service. So at this time, they're not, but it doesn't tell us
What's
what.
the date
We
on
just
that?
know that, we know this, we know that that intersection, and it has to be improved.
And at some point in the future, it may be
Future is the key word.
lifetimes. I had the
Yes,
floor and
yes,
yielded it to
yes,
Martha.
yes, you have it.
That there will be an improvement. But at the present time, this is what we're approving. And at the present time, it appears that it will have a fairly negative effect on the traffic at all of these intersections. And I cannot support it either, Martha.
Okay. Mr. Lauren?
I have a couple of questions. Number one, on the document that we were given in our packet. Okay. Up at the top, it says there's 194 lots on 252 acres. And I've looked at the drawings, and I only see 185 lots identified by number. Where are the rest of them?
The rest, that's 5 acre lots.
That's 5 acres.
They included lots that we don't own.
They've included-
Okay,
But I don't understand it either.
all right. That's the ones where it says lots owned by developer, but not owned by developer.
The PUD will encompass the entire tract, even though I don't own the whole tract, for some reason. The law.
Okay,
So
well,
I'm not, those aren't my lots.
okay. Well, the thing that concerns me, I guess, as much as anything, is the one the gentleman mentioned in the back of the room. If you take the lots that are identified and has the legend, the cross-hatching and whatnot on it, I can identify 189 lots. And of 189 lots, there's only 43 of those lots that are in non-wetlands area, which would seem to, that seems to be awful treacherous to me. Because even according to this plan, some of it says flood zone A, flood zone B, which to me is highly flood prone. Again, which goes back to what the gentleman in the back mentioned about the flooding in the area. Yeah. Certainly.
Mr. Bruno, if you would come to the podium, thank you.
I find it astounding, to be honest, quite honest with you. By your very regulations, in order to have this, you have to reduce flooding by 25%. If we hadn't, we will, by your very regulations, we have reduced flooding by 25%. Am I missing something? And wait, another thing too. Getting caught up, and look, I'm not trying to be, I guess the problem I'm having.
Mr. Bruno, would you like that question answered?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Staff?
Go ahead.
Staff, answer Mr. Bruno's question. By definition, he has to reduce flooding by 25%, as Mr. Bruno's.
Runoffs.
From
Runoff.
Mr. Bruno's statement. Is that correct? Okay.
That is the requirement. The hydrologist has to come up with a plan to do that. In spite of those plans.
Mr. Lauren, turn your microphone on, please.
I'm sorry. In spite of those plans in the parish, we know in the last couple of 3 years, we've had a lot of places where there have been plans that have been approved by the commission where there has been flooding, okay? And the flooding has occurred in the places where it's flood zone A and flood zone B. And this document that we were given to look at says that there's a predominance of property that's in flood zone A and B, and it's a concern. Okay.
But Mr. Lauren, by your conclusion is you are doubting the science. I mean, either the science is correct or the science is wrong. The engineering submitted to other engineers have said that it's reduced by 25%. You're setting up an impossible burden to meet. If I can't rely on the science, what can I rely on? I mean, I can't just say, well, 100 years ago, you know, we had 3 feet of water here. Yeah, I can't. All I can do is go by the science. And I think what y'all are, and Ms. Casbon, I think what you're missing here is, like I said, it's not going to be perfect. But you think 50 more houses is a lot? You're talking about maybe, what, 15 miles from the interstate all the way down to the end of 1077? And you think that these 50 houses, what are you going to do when everybody else wants to develop along that? Don't we have equal protection in the United States anymore? I mean, what I'm saying is, the guy next to me has got 2 lots per acre. I'm coming in here. And one thing I really want to forgive me because, I mean, I really think we've been given an impossible burden, okay? What we're doing, and if we go away, which we may very well because, you know, we got other things we can do. If that right-of-way is not given by me, then those houses are going to be built on 1077. They're going to be built on Tantilla. And those people are going to back into 1077. And the only person that's going to solve that is the owner of this property, and that's me. So, yeah, I can nitpick all day about 50 more houses or questioning whether or not it's a flood zone or whatever. But, you know, if you get any kind of wetlands expert in here, and I'll go on record, I'll tell you right now, this flood zone thing, you all know, for the most part, is a joke. It's actually theft of your property because not 1 acre of wetlands is saved anyway. you go buy in some bank that's a wetland that'll never, ever be developed. It's just a way to get money out of people's pockets, and there's no science that says just because it's a wetland means it's going to flood more. I mean, we can't make decisions based on just a whim. We have to make decisions based on science. That's why we're required to follow certain requirements. I read that PUD ordinance with my best lawyer eyes, and I went through every single line of that. Not one line says number of houses, okay? I don't even understand how anybody could logically argue that reducing 3/4 of the usable land down to 1/3 of the usable land is a negative impact. I don't get that. So what you're telling me is, Bruno, go ahead and build your 127 homes, cut down 3/4 of the acre of all of the land, the trees, the oaks, whatever, cut them all down to nothing, and let's go in there and build these 4,000 or 5,000 square foot houses, and then let's go cut our grass, let's go have our weed eaters, and let's go and keep doing the same things we've always done. On the other hand, the man came down here, Mr. Duani, was hired by the parish, paid for by our parish money, and said, hey, this is what you need to be doing. This is what the smart people are doing around the country. They're putting density closer together, neighbors closer together, and they're surrounding it by forest. If I haven't done that, then
I'd like to state for the record, I supported you last time. I was one of the few that I thought this was a good plan, and it was purposeful, 127 acres. But this, and it's not, it's just we have questions.
no problem.
And we want to get answers to those questions before we can make an informative decision. I understand that you may be following codes as you're reading it, but right now, as a commission and as me, I have questions if it will be, we've dealt with safety concerns, and if people can't get to those homes on those roads whenever, that's all we're asking for right now. I understand that you have followed these rules and you've read these rules and stuff, but, and this is also another reason, I have a question.
Martha,
It's
excuse
like,
me.
excuse me, I have.
No.
I have,
I'm sorry, we are going to go in order. It was not your turn to speak, and I respectfully ask you to wait your comments
No problem.
until such time that you would like to address them to Mr. Bruno. But your comments are compelling, and we'd like to hear them, but I would like to go in order.
not.
Mr. Matthews, you still have the floor.
I actually have a couple of other questions. This, I guess it's Cozy Lane, does it actually connect with Post Oak Drive, or do these dead end?
Helen, I'm going to leave that to you.
I'm asking
Helen
the
did that.
developer.
We followed their recommendations.
I asked a question. Do these two roads connect, or are they both dead ends?
No, they're both
No,
dead ends.
It's a cul-de-sac. It may be hard to see with that little print, but it's a cul-de-sac.
Okay. Why are they cul-de-sacs? Why are they dead ends? Why do they not connect?
We did that in an effort to work with the residents on Cozy Lane.
That road will give them access to their lots, right?
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah, they'll continue to
Okay?
do what they were.
But it seems foolish to have two dead-end roads abutting each other,
I understand where you're coming from,
okay?
but that's,
Why are we doing that?
well, that's the reason that we did it, was to appease the folks on Cozy Lane, because they didn't want the through traffic.
But that doesn't make good traffic sense for the entire subdivision, does it?
Well, it's because of the issue of those lots along Highway 1077 and Tantilla. That's what we were working with.
To give them access?
Yes, sir.
I understand that, and that's what you've done, but it appears, just to a layman, to be a little ridiculous to have two dead-end streets butting head-to-head here. It doesn't make sense to me, as a layman, I'm not a traffic engineer, but it doesn't make sense to me for the traffic flow of the entire subdivision, which should be the prime concern, okay?
Well, Mr. Matthews, to be honest with you, this is kind of what, this should appease Dr. Martin, because his big concern was that traffic would be, that most people would pick Tantilla to come out of. As I look at it, I think most of the traffic is going to go out on 1077. I don't think, I don't see why anybody
I'm not
would.
addressing that, not questioning that. I really don't think that connecting that is going to take the guy on lot 6 is going to go out to Highway 1077 instead of going out Tintilla Ranch Road. I don't think that's going to make much difference to him one way or the other. But the point is,
Point of order, point of order. A question is asked. The question should be responded to. Hypothetical situations of traffic is not what the zoning commission is about. So Mr. Matthews asked a question regarding why.
Yes.
I would ask that you give a response as to why.
As we said, we answered you to appease our people friends on Cozy Lane. They asked us to do it, and we did it. Everybody that's asked us to do anything on this thing, we've done. I mean, everybody that's asked us to do anything. I mean, even Dr. Martin's complaints, I mean, I respect that.
Okay.
You know, he's worried about a little triangle in there and things like that.
Mr. Brenner, okay, this isn't a chance for you to go through another closing to the jury like you've been doing. I'm asking questions, the staff, the commission is asking questions, not an opening for you to give another soliloquy. I have another question. You're talking about the runoff. You've reduced it 25%. And I understand that. You must do that. Runoff doesn't take into consideration whether the houses in here will or will not flood. All that takes into consideration is how much water you're going to push to the adjoining subdivisions or the adjoining properties, okay? So I just want to correct you that saying there's 25% less runoff does not mean that the houses in your subdivision will or will not flood, okay?
That's correct.
I don't know whether they will or will not flood either. But that was a point you seriously wanted to make, and I think it was totally wrong. Given all of the concerns that have been addressed by the commission, I would like to postpone this matter until such time as we can get some of the answers, and in particular, the traffic study question answered.
I'll second it.
It's not a motion.
I thought he made a motion.
I made a-
Did you make a motion?
I made a motion to postpone.
Can I
A
respond?
motion is made to postpone. Mr. Richard.
I'm of another opinion.
No, I'm addressing Mr. Richard, whose light was on. You made a motion. It's open as a motion. I'm addressing Mr. Richard, who was next. Someone can light their light and second your motion if they choose.
Let me light my light. I did.
I am addressing Mr. Richard.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We will understand Robert's Rules of Order. I can assure you that.
Not a problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take a different position here, and I do recognize there are a lot of unanswered questions. But there's time and a place to answer these questions. What we have right now is a potential development. We've got a developer who has gone to great lengths to try to satisfy everyone in the community. Can't satisfy everyone, but have tried to. We had a PUD that was already on the books. We have some issues related to potential flooding, wetlands permits, traffic studies, but there's a place and a time for that. At this point in time, all we're asked to do is to approve this amendment to the PUD. That allows them to take the next steps, which, by the way, costs quite a bit of money to accomplish in time, to even find out if this project's going to go. And all we're being asked to at this commission at this point in time is to take a look at what's being presented. Now, I will say this. Times have changed. I understand we made some decisions. I wasn't on this commission 6 years ago. The marketplace has changed. What is considered proper planning, what is considered modern housing techniques, density, that's all changed, and it continues to evolve. This, on the surface, looks like a good project. There are some things that we can tweak, and we will tweak it for a while to get it right. But we have a developer who's willing to tweak it and get it right. So in my position, and I'm going to support this, I may not be supported by my fellow commissioners, but I think that for us to go to the next step, to get those answers that we all need to make this happen or not happen, we need to make this we need to approve this. Otherwise, we're going to basically delay it and ask the developer to continue to spend time and money just to get us answers that we need and that we're going to get anyway. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Lauren.
I have one question, and our attorney stepped out of the room, and he's the one that needs to answer it. And the question I have is, on the traffic study data that Helen furnished and gave up to Martha to read a few minutes ago, it said, at this point in time, this is the condition of the traffic. That was, what, 5 years ago? No. My question is, if we approve this tonight, will a new traffic study be required? Or, since it was approved before for 124 units, will there not be a new traffic study required? Okay? I think that's critical, because if you say you don't get a new traffic study, then we won't get a shot at that topic.
I think I can answer the question. I think a traffic study has a life of 5 years.
Well, if we can,
Yeah, we'll wait until
let's
Mr. Hand
get,
returns.
let's get our attorney to give us, he'll be back in just a second. But we can go on with what we've got and get that answer.
I'd like,
Mr. Matthews?
like to remake my motion to postpone till next month.
Motion to postpone.
I second it.
Ms. Casbon seconds it. Is there any further discussion? We will wait, however, to get Mr. Hand's. That's part of the discussion. We apologize for the temporary delay. Mr. Yes, Mr. Lauren, would you please address your question to
All
Mr.
right,
Hand?
Thank you. Mr. Hand, since the traffic study that was done over 5 years ago for the 124 lots stated the conditions at that time, and that was approved, if we approve this amendment to the PUD, will a new traffic study be required?
That is an engineering decision. If they feel that there's been a material change, I believe that their recommendation, and I can't speak on behalf of the traffic engineers, would be that a new traffic study would be in order to proceed with the project.
So it would not come back before us?
Not at the zoning level, but at the planning level, it will.
Mr. Matthews. Mr. Hand and maybe staff, is that something we as the commission can require to be done? Can we require a traffic study?
Not at the zoning level.
What level can we?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Matthews, I'm trying to review the ordinance right now.
Okay,
I
so-
don't know if it can be required,
But
it's a
as we
question that
sit here
would,
tonight,
it's a question that would come at planning.
all we could do, according to Mr. Hand, is we might be able to make a recommendation. The engineers may decide yes or no. So we may be stuck with a 5-year or 6-year, whatever it is, old traffic study, and we can't do anything about that. But I would like to know that surely, and we don't know that tonight. So that was part of my concern for wanting to postpone this until we can get that answer for sure and make sure that we get a traffic study.
So a motion has been made to postpone until next month by Mr. Matthews. It's been seconded by Ms. Casabon. And Mr. Matthews further would like by next month, the commission would like to know by that time, if it is postponed, what the status of the traffic study would be.
That's correct. Yes, that's
How
my
about-
position.
Mr. Bruno, you have not been addressed. We have a motion on the floor. We have a second to postpone. Please vote.
May I have a,
Is it proper order to? have
No, you're out of
opposition?
order. You are out of order, sir. Please be silent right now.
no, so you don't postpone. What is no?
Well, the motion to postpone has failed. Is there any other motion?
Tell 'em.
Mr. Richard,
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
motion to approve by Mr. Richard, seconded by Mr. Davis. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Davis?
Yes, just so everybody's aware, Mr. Richard made some very good comments. Just because we approve the zoning here, again, it has to go through the planning process. And we have engineers and people in the planning department that make sure that the wetlands or make sure that we have a wetlands permit, to make sure that these individuals have a 25% runoff. So it's really not our job to do the planning and the zoning all at one day. So with that being said, that's why I agree with the other councilman.
Mr. Matthews, comment?
If we vote to approve this, it's my understanding that we will be stuck with 194 lots. That won't change. Is that correct?
Staff? Excuse me. Staff, is that correct?
Yes, you're voting on the approval of the plan as shown, as presented to you this evening.
And if our traffic study comes back and says, wow, that's way too many lots, we're still stuck with 194 lots.
Well, the
No?
traffic study is not gonna say that's too many lots. The traffic study may say what improvements is required to be able to support 194 lots.
And if the traffic study comes back and says we have to improve Highway 1077, the developer cannot change Highway 1077. That's a state highway. Is that correct?
It is a state highway, however, if some improvements or turning lane are required, it will have to be,
Approved by the state. If where's the funding coming from? Where, if we have to have a traffic circle someplace, where's the funding coming from that? That's a state highway, would have to have a traffic circle. Those are over $1 million to do. I can't see anybody requiring a developer to put in $1 million traffic circle.
well,
So we're stuck with 194 lots and terrible traffic.
Is there any further discussion? Then we have a motion to approve by Mr. Richard, seconded by Mr. Davis. Please vote. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you all.
Yes.
Just for the record, on tonight, all the votes that I cast are showing up under your name, okay? And I just want the record
Thank you.
straight that I'm,
Thank you,
that
Mr.
that's my
Dougherty.
vote.
For the record, let it be shown that votes cast by Mr. Dougherty were actually shown under Mr. Manella, and any vote that Mr. Manella cast is shown under Mr. Dougherty. Thank you. Okay. We are on agenda item number 5. ZC 15-01-001, existing zoning A5, two-family residential district and HC2 highway commercial district. The proposed zoning A7 multifamily residential district. 0.36 acres. The petitioner Willa Pitts Kramer. The owner Willa Pitts Kramer. The location, parcel is located on the north side of Walnut Street, west of Palmetto Avenue, being lots 36, 37, and 38. Ward 4, District 5. Staff?
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses, which includes multifamily residential. The site is currently developed with a fourplex. Staff does not object to the rezoning, considering that the objective of the request is to bring the site into compliance with existing use. Note, the A7 zoning district allows for a maximum net density of 1 unit per 2,500 square feet of property. However, the small size of the site would not allow for an increase in the number of units. Staff recommends approval.
Is the petitioner here? Would you care to come to the podium?
Good evening. My name is Willa Kramer, and I presently occupy one of the units on Walnut Street. The other 3 are rentals, which contribute vastly to my income. I purchased them following the flooding of my home excuse me, in Lakeview in New Orleans, and I purchased them as rental units with myself as one of the occupants. Having it as a 4-unit complex is my goal. I want to keep it that way. And the zoning was changed after I purchased the property in 2006.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Martha. 1 second, sir. We're trying to ask the people to exit the building. Yeah. Unfortunately, if people go to the back of the chamber, it echoes back in and it can be disruptive. She's one of the best. Please proceed.
Yes, my name is Bruce Kaufman. I'm a mortgage banker with America's Mortgage Resource in Metairie. I specialize in reverse mortgages. I have approved a reverse mortgage for Ms. Kramer, but we hit a snag in that with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD, and VA for that matter, when a zoning ordinance is passed and contains a provision that stipulates that if the subject property is destroyed 50% or more, it cannot be replaced as a fourplex. It can only be a duplex. You can't finance a property like that. It's not going to pass. So to the extent that the property has long been a fourplex, continues to be a fourplex, and as staff has indicated, it will not permit additional density. We're asking the commission to approve this so that we can complete the transaction for Ms. Kramer.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else care to speak in favor? Anyone care to speak in opposition?
Actually, I just came to speak.
Please state your name.
My name is Bill Smith. I live at 71205 Whiskey Oaks Lane. I also own a number of pieces of property in this neighborhood where she lives, Ms. Kramer, and I'm not opposed to it. I was just kind of shocked at the change and was more concerned with not knowing what was going on with it than anything else. But I don't see any problem with, as long as she's not going to tear it down and build a 5-story apartment building. No change. I don't see any problem with it. I think the maximum unit she can have there is 4, you said? Sounds good to me.
Thank
Approve
you.
it.
If you haven't filled out a speaker card, I'd ask you to do so. Anyone else care to speak on this case? Hearing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Mr. Lauren,
I think it's a sound project, and I move to approve.
I'll second.
motion to approve, second by Ms. Casabon. Any further discussion? Mr. Matthews?
I'm in favor of this, but this is a problem we've faced over and over again, where these people actually can keep what they have, but the big problem is they can't get mortgages. And they come to us with this, and it looks, well, why don't you just stay with what you got, because you can keep your fourplex. Well, the gentleman just explained the reason, and this is what we've created a little bit of a monster in our comprehensive rezoning by not identifying all these, and we've got to clear these up.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve and
Have a
second.
discussion.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, just as a note, I do agree with making a motion approving this, but this individual actually could put 6 dwellings on that property, according to our regulations, because she has 671 square foot, and at 1,500 square foot, that would be 6.
Mr. Chairman?
Is that correct?
Yes.
I mean, if you just do the calculation, but because of the required green space and the required number of parking spaces,
Okay.
it
All right.
would
Thank
not be, unless if
Thank
they
you.
build a parking garage, which I don't think it's.
So I thank you for the clarification.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve. Please vote. Motion carries. ZC 15-01-002, existing zoning highway commercial 2, proposed zoning I-2 industrial district, 6 acres. The petitioner, Paul Richard, the owner, Paul and Susan Richard. Parcel located on the north side of Pile Drive, west of Doss Drive, south of I-12, Ward 9, District 14. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed as a planned district with single-family residences and a conservation area. A portion of the site is currently developed with an existing office warehouse. Staff is not in favor of the request, considering the proximity of the residences across the street and the intensity of the uses allowed under I-2. Note that prior to the comprehensive rezoning, the site was zoned M1 light industrial. At this time, staff would like to recommend denial of the request.
Is the petitioner here?
Yes, sir.
Please come to the podium and state your name. And if you haven't, please fill out a speaker card.
Paul Richard Jr. with RDG Properties. I'm with my father, Paul Richard Sr. We're principals in RDG Properties LLC, a real estate holding company. All the properties located in St. Tammany. We have 6 medium-sized commercial buildings, 2 of which are on our diagram right there that she's passing around, and a few residential lots near that, and a couple of residential houses. We purchased this property in 2004 with the industrial zoning in place. It presented us with a unique opportunity because we had to operate our business out of there, which was an offshore crane repair and service company. We did steel fabrication, painting, different industrial activities on site, and we moved our business to that property in the building that's under rezoning request now. And then we were bought out, and the company that purchased us, Cargotech, continued operations for some time in that building. It presented us with a unique opportunity, being that it was industrial land, but still visible from the interstate. So that was a good investment, and we partitioned it into 5 separate lots, which you see on the diagram coming by now. Just to make sure you understand where it is, it's in Slidell, right before the Highway 11 exit. As you're traveling past the mall, Slidell Mall, then you come to a ski lake on your right. Then you have our building, the VA clinic, and then there's the Highway 11 exchange, I-12 exchange right there. We've been well received in the community. We've tried to be a good neighbor over the years. We built a park, which you can see in the corner on that diagram, in conjunction with the VA's efforts and us purchasing that property. We're involved in the community, Nights Out Against Crime, different supportive organizations in there. And the area was basically a dump with people hanging out in the yards, drugs, what have you. The community did not like it. So we were well received, and we operated our business, which was M1, and did all those activities without any complaints. As you're well aware of, the zoning was changed, and it changed to highway commercial, and Cargotec since has relocated and consolidated their operations in Houston. So we have a new tenant that was coming in, and all this is kind of coming to fruition now. The building that you see there in B is an industrial building. It's a $2 million building, which is financed through the bank, and we pay the note on it. And it has a crane inside. It's specific for use for manufacturing within certain zoning codes, and I-2 is the code that is needed for that facility. The tenant that's moving in, fortunately, just recently, needs the I-2 classification for their operations. So they have 50 jobs that they're bringing to the table when they move into the building, and they get their contract in place in March, which they have already started moving in. They're under lease. And with the potential in 6 to 12 months to build another building directly to the left for assembly and fabrication, assembly and not necessarily manufacturing, but just assembly and production. So that's why to the left we would need I-2 there as well. The I-1 doesn't work because fabrication and repair, steel are specifically referenced as not permitted. But we do, if you read through our request for zoning change, and this is through conversations with T.J. Smith, who's well of our request, and our councilman, and how we want to approach this, we will have specific deed restrictions to exclude certain activities in the I-2 classification, because the old one was M1, and as you're well aware of, the I-1 versus I-2, they've kind of merged a little bit, so there's no clear transition between the old and the new. And we're, I guess you could say, requesting something in between. So cleaning and dye works, foundry casting, paint manufacturing treatment, chemicals, tires, outdoor stores, buildings, all those, as per our letter in our zoning request change, will be excluded through a deed restriction to satisfy the community and make it more palatable because of the nearby residents. We have 5 lots and a house along this area, so there's only about 3 or 4 different houses that could potentially be affected. But again, I'd like to say that we've never had any complaints in the past with our crane company. They're well received on businesses and large companies coming in and operating to provide jobs and stabilize the area. So with that being said, I think that's pretty much the gist of it. I appreciate your time tonight and hearing our case, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Would anyone care to speak in opposition? Hearing none, I close it to the public. Wait, I'm sorry. Please come to the mic, state your name.
Excuse me, I'm Jimmy Strickland, part of the homeowner association in the neighborhood. And in reference to what they were doing, this is my, I'm the president of the association, to their proposal. I'm just unaware of the deed restrictions, so if that's something that we could meet about in reference to what those deed restrictions will be, then we would I would like to discuss that. As of now, this is my first knowledge of this, hearing that, and that's something I think we would need to discuss before we could, I would be wanted to be denied until we've further discussed that deed restriction.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. And if you would, please fill out a speaker's card. Any further comments from the public? I bring it back to the commission.
What about rebuttal? Shouldn't we have rebuttal, Dave?
Yes. Thank you.
Paul Richard, Senior, owner of the property. And in respect to his question about the deed restrictions, we're asking for a zoning change to meet what the existing zoning that we're proposing calls for. We're not going to go anywhere outside of what's legally according to the zoning that we're requesting. So, there would have been, if we went back to the old original M1, then there would have to be zoning restrictions. But to go to the I-2, we're going to just meet whatever the zoning for the parish is. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
From my understanding, he said there were like 3 houses that may be affected. We don't know what degree that those houses would be affected. So that's one of the issues that we have with that.
Thank you. Yes, you can.
We definitely want to work with the community and are willing to discuss anything that might affect them, which we have done in the past. Just so you're aware, on the rear of the property, there's a 8-foot steel fence. There's some buffer trees that are left. These were all part of the original design, and that would continue. So that helps protect the activities on site to the residents. Without getting into the specifics of I-2, I mean, it does prohibit outdoor sandblasting, outdoor painting, anything really that noisy, or outdoor storage. Portable storage buildings are also part of our deed restriction, which are permitted for I-2, but we're taking them out through the deed restriction. So we've kind of tried to merge it into a palatable environment for the community. Do you have any additional questions?
We will. They haven't closed the floor.
Mr. Richard, you state that there is a deed restriction. Can you read what the restrictions are for the record?
Yes, sir. These are specifically listed in the I-2 and classification list. Point 4, cleaning and dyeing works, which involve chemicals and smells. Foundry casting and extruding mills of lightweight, non-ferrous metal, that's point 12, is excluded. So there's no iron works per se, manufacturing of iron or steel or metals in there. Paint manufacturing and treatment, item 24, is also restricted due to the smells and chemical nature of that. We don't want any chemicals on site per se to that nature. Tire retreading, recapping, rebuilding, item 28 with respect to tires. And item 31, portable storage container use for storage, just to prohibit a lot of outdoor portable storage containers around the site haphazardly. Also excluded from section 5.402, it references portable storage containers used for storage. It was just referenced in 2 sections, so that will also be excluded to make sure it's covered. That's what's proposed, and that was through conversations with Mr. Smith of what we felt like, or he felt like would be good to be restricted in the I-2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I close it to the public and I bring it back to the commission at this time. Mr. Randolph?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to first preface my remarks and my statements by saying that the Richards have been very well received in the community, very well respected. I just want to make sure that while we're exercising our independence and autonomy in making these decisions, we also need to be clear about what the petitioner, the Richards, are actually trying to do. In your request, are you trying to rezone the entire slate of property from H2 to I2, or just a certain section, a certain piece of the property where buildings are or not? That's the first question.
In this request, we are petitioning to rezone the entire property to the requested I2 with the deed restrictions in place.
Okay. Just requesting that it be rezoned from HC2 to I2, all properties. I have no problem with your prospective business coming in to occupy a part of your property that is already occupied with a building on it. But to rezone the vacant property as well, from HC2 to I2 just because you have a building on one, I have an issue with that because of some of the residents. And if the residents have some issues or was not aware of some of the deed restrictions, I think if you're going to do the entire vast of property, they need to know exactly what your whole plan is going to be. Okay.
Well, the current tenant that's moving in for I2 is moving in here at Building B, and Lot A is really just a parking and accessory lot for Building B. It's kind of shaped irregular, so you can't really build on it. So these two pretty much go together for sure. The tenant needs this area over here as well, so for their operations, these three need to be the I2 classification. I mean, and then they want to build an assembly facility on Lot C, which they would know in 6 to 12 months if they get a certain government contract. That would need to go here. Now this one, it is right next to the existing VA clinic, and perhaps through some compromise or maybe an effort that would satisfy individuals, we could talk about that if that helps.
May I continue? You stated that, keep the map up if you don't mind, section or the property identified as Exhibit A, that is going to be utilized or need to be utilized possibly by your prospective business that's going to occupy the building that's in property B. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, whether they, if they expand into property A, subsequent to rezoning it from HC2 to I2, you stated that it was going to be basically for parking structure, maybe parking.
Some parking and storage of the vehicles that they're manufacturing, and there's some security requirements that it's a government contract, so they're going to add a security fence along this area, and which is private. I don't recall exactly all the particulars, but I know that they will be utilizing this area in their operations. You know, aside from satisfying the tenant that's coming in, there is some feeling that since we purchased the property as industrial, as our investment, family investment, and didn't petition a change in that zoning, we feel that that's somewhat part of the reason why we should get the zoning back to where it was and not have to encounter any potential tenant problems and still operate within the I-2 and be selective of the businesses that come in as to not disrupt the community, but also allow the maximum potential for tenants, not exclude certain tenants, because you can always go down, but we would never be able to go back up. So we're trying to get that corrected.
With my concerns to the commission, as it relate to all the property being rezoned from HC2 to industrial, I2, and the concerns with the homeowners association, I think it'll be a good time for us to postpone this so that the Richards can get and meet with the homeowners association to get a consensus that this would fit. And there's another thing that I think the commission may be aware of, that Mr. Smith is also trying to coordinate some type of effort for the North Slidell revitalization area. And I would like all of that to be considered as well.
Right. That's great.
So I move to postpone.
Second.
Motion to postpone by Mr. Randolph, second by Mr. Davis. I'm sorry?
You didn't say.
Mr. Richard?
Yes, for the record, we share the same surname, but we're in no way related. It's important to note that, although I am familiar with your business. My question is to staff. This business, in fact, the building that you had, I suspect was built, well, when was your building built, the current building?
We completed construction in 2007.
Okay, that's what I thought, somewhere in that neighborhood. And during that period of time, you operated it as a crane service rental business?
That's correct, with boom repair, steel fabrication, welding, such like that, all done inside predominantly.
Well, then my question to staff is, when the business was operating, was it in compliance with HC2?
No, at the time it was on M1 light industrial.
But post rezoning, comprehensive rezoning, they were still in business as a crane operation.
Yeah, they became a legal non-conforming
Okay,
use.
so they were non-conforming. I guess that's my point. This was another business that, because of the comprehensive rezoning, fell out of conformity, and we all knew what the purpose of that building was and that business was. It's one that fell through the crack. Now, if the M1 light wouldn't have worked, does I1 fit that classification of what they were operating as? Or was it always an I2?
It would need to be an I2
Okay.
right now to make it
We would
legal
do this all day long. We would go ahead and approve an I2 because it's been operating as an I2. It was an I2, but we changed the rules. So we would, and we've done it many, many times. To me, where their property's located and where their business is located probably should be an I2 with a generous offer of restrictions. Now, understand those deed restrictions are not to the benefit of the parish, they're to the benefit of someone else, which would have to be the homeowners association. I don't know who else would be the beneficiary of it. But that being said, the only real question is those additional lots, whether or not they should have been zoned I2 with restrictions or not. Were they zoned M1 back then? Okay. We can postpone this, and I know there's a motion on the floor, but in the past, we would have approved this without question, simply because through no fault of their own, we changed the rules of the game on it. I'd like to hear some of other commissioners' comment.
Ms. Kazaman?
That's how I feel too. This is, again, we've done this many times, that we straighten out, you know, a business has been in one particular zoning, carrying on their business, and the community obviously fit into the community, and then we changed the zoning. So I concur with Mr. Richard that this is one of those things we need to straighten out.
Thank you. Mr. Lauren, you taking yours off? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, Mr. Richard, I understand how you'd like to have at least A, B, and C, I too, obviously. I mean, if you think you're gonna progress and, you said D was empty, and what's actually on E right now?
A VA clinic.
Now, is that currently compliant as well under highway commercial too?
It is
Okay.
highway commercial too, yes.
Would it be compliant under our I-2?
No, he's not requesting to rezone that property.
Oh, you're not requesting to rezone?
Not,
E? Oh, I'm
not
sorry.
E.
I'm looking at it, it's not a partial, okay, I'm sorry, apologize.
Mr. Matthews?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. The activity that was on this piece of property before, and it was zoned M1, was that in compliance with M1?
Yes, it was.
It was, okay. And so we changed it to Highway Commercial 2.
Correct?
That is still in compliance.
No, it's not.
It's not in compliance.
It is a legal non-conforming use at this time.
Okay. The only thing that would allow what they were doing and what they're proposing to do would be I-2. Is that correct? What they were doing in the past and what they're doing now. It would be I-2.
It would make it legal conforming.
Okay. And I agree, A, B, and C, therefore clearly need to be changed to I-2 to get the previous business and the new business into conformance. D, I'm concerned with, it's right next to a VA clinic, and is that something akin to hospital doctor services, et cetera? I'm not really sure that we want to go that far over with this piece of property and have I-2 abutting this clinic. And also the proposed, and I emphasize proposed, deed restrictions are not in place now. Is that correct?
They are not. It was my understanding that if approved, it wouldn't be
You all
official
will do.
until we
Okay.
file that
And-
and
and-
give them
and
to
for
Ms.
the
Lambert.
record, because I got a little confusion here as to whether you were going to do deed restrictions or not. The other gentleman seemed to kind of indicate that maybe there weren't going to be deed restrictions. But I want on the record that if anything is approved, that there will be deed restrictions on this property, at least as to what you suggested.
Sure, we agree to that. And if it can expedite the process, if we want to take D out of the mix and leave that alone, but we would need F because their operations are kind of concurrent in that area, that would be fine with us. And that one
Okay.
is far west on the end anyway.
Okay, is F part of what we had advertised?
Everything has been advertised correctly.
Okay, A, B, and C,
A, B, C, D, as well as the 1.57 acres to the west of that parcel, which comes up to 6 acres. That's what was submitted to us.
okay. So that little section over there was advertised. Okay, that's fine. If you voluntarily remove D, I would be in favor of it.
We agree to that.
But we have a motion on the floor.
Right, we have
Yeah,
to
we
vote
have
on
a
the
motion
motion.
on the floor.
Okay, let's see what we have here
No.
first. Right,
Jim?
well,
Okay.
Mr. Matthews, do you have any further questions?
No.
Okay. Mr. Randolph,
Yes, sir.
do you have any further questions? Your light's on.
I have a statement. Initially, the question was asked was all the property in a part of the petition considered to be a part of the rezoning change request? Yes. Now we're suggesting that part of the property, which is item D, be excluded from the request, along with making sure that all of the deed restrictions are put into place if this is done. Correct?
Yes, sir, that's what I understand.
Okay. Okay.
Now,
Chair?
just as a point of clarification, what can happen is we currently have a motion and a second on the floor. What that actually does, so the commission, so the public understands, it is now in front of the commission. No one owns it but the commission. So if the commission would like to entertain Mr. Richard's change of the parcel, the commission can either A, put a new motion on that would withdraw the other, for which we'd have to make a motion second and approve it, it would withdraw, or we can vote on the first. If it is denied, another motion can come forth. So again, I leave it to the commission.
Yeah,
Mr. Mann?
We've got a motion on the floor.
Correct.
We need to vote on that motion.
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion on the floor is made by Mr. Randolph, second by Mr. Dougherty, to postpone. Please vote. The motion to postpone is denied. Is there any other motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd
Mr.
like to make
Matthews.
a motion to approve the rezoning of lots A, B, and C, and the extended parcel to the north, I guess it's to the west, okay, because I didn't see a compass rose on here to tell me where it was, to the west, all to I-2. And the petitioner has voluntarily withdrawn parcel D from his request. And with the request, because that's all we can do, that before this comes before the council, that there is a deed restriction in place for at least the numbers that he stated on the record. I'd also like maybe for you to, and it's his request to meet with the people in the area to see if there are any other things that would conceivably be agreeable to put in your deed restriction.
Sure, I was thinking the same thing.
Okay?
I'll second that.
So we have a motion by Mr. Matthews that would change the zoning from HC2 to I2, and please correct me if I'm wrong, on parcel A, B, and C,
And the property to the west.
and the property to the west, as
How many
noted,
acres
is
is
noted on the plat.
Yeah, how many acres is that?
1.57, right?
So basically, it is to rezone, the motion is to rezone with the exclusion of D.
Right.
Okay, if you would restate that then. The motion on the floor is to rezone with the exclusion of parcel D.
That's correct.
And Mr. Davis, you second that.
Yes. With the deed restrictions as quoted.
Request, that's all we can do.
Requested.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries. ZC 15-01-003, existing zoning, A1 Suburban District, proposed zoning, A1 Suburban District, and manufactured housing overlay. 3 acres, the petitioner, Nicholas Carboni, owner, Nicholas Carboni, parcel located on the south side of Bayham Road, west of Louisiana Highway 1077, being 12274 Bayham Road, Covington, Ward 1, District 3. Staff?
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses, including manufactured homes. Staff does not object to the requested rezoning. as there are several mobile homes in the near vicinity, and staff recommends the request be approved.
Is the petitioner here? Please come forward, state your name.
How you doing? Name's Nicholas Carboni, and I own the 3 acres on Bayham Road, and they do have mobile home trailers in the area. And when I purchased the land, they did have a mobile home on my property, and I just went and took it down myself because it was run down.
Okay.
So I was just asking to try to get it back rezoned so I can put a mobile home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you would fill out a speaker card.
All right.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in favor of this? Anyone wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Mr. Matthews?
I would move to approve this request with the admonition that there are certain restrictions that you understand to put a mobile home on here, like skirting and all those things. You agree to do all those things? Okay.
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Casabon. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Can I vote, Jimmy?
Motion carries. Thank you. ZC 15-01-004, existing zoning, NC4 Neighborhood Institutional District, proposed zoning, HC2 Highway Commercial District, .997 acres. The petitioner is Tommy Trapp. The owner is Tommy and Norris Trapp. The parcel is located on the north side of US Highway 190, Ward 9, District 11. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. The parcel is surrounded by NC4 zoning except on the north side where it abuts residential zone property. Staff feel that the existing zoning is appropriate for the location and sees no compelling reason to increase the intensity of the commercial zoning at this time, and staff would like to recommend denial of the request.
Is the petitioner here? Yes, sir. Please come forward and state your name.
How you doing? My name is Tommy Trapp. I'm the owner of the property. I purchased the property. It is zoned NC4 at this point in time. Just to the east of it, on North Tranquility Lane, there is zoning that is HC1 at this point in time, about 300 feet away, one lot away. To the west of it, probably about a quarter of a mile, there is HC3 zoning at that location as well. I'm requesting to get it rezoned to HC2 at this point. It is directly in front of the highway, adjoins Highway 190. In the denial letter from the staff, there is some concern about the surrounding properties. I also own the property on the north side of it as well. If I am impacting the surrounding areas, I'm also impacting myself with this zoning request.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Anyone wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public and I bring it back to the commission. Mr. Drum.
Yes, sir. I went and looked at this property over the weekend, and I don't see any reason why we can't do this. The properties that are to his west, one of them is a lawn care business, and the other one is an auto repair business, and immediately next to that is a building I have no idea what it's used for. And so I understand Mr. Trapp wants to put a self-storage or a miniature storage facility there.
Yes,
and,
sir.
the properties that are around it will not be affected by this at all. That's it. So I make a motion that we accept the change.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Drum, a second by Mr. Willie. Any further discussion? Mr. Richard?
I respect Mr. Drum. He's obviously taken the time to learn the area. I am a little bit concerned in general when we make a change like this for a business that doesn't even exist, that wasn't caused by our comprehensive rezoning. I can assure you that the businesses the land to the left and right will be back before us asking for a zoning upgrade before long, citing that their neighbor next door is highway commercial. I respect the fact that the area today may seem like it can support it, but that's why we're here. I mean, that's the job we have. So I can't support it. I don't feel so strongly about it that Mr. Drum, like I said, Mr. Drum knows what he's doing over there. But you know, that's why we have staff, and that's why we went through this process. Spot zoning is tricky. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Matthews?
I agree with Mr. Richard. This piece of property, today as it sits, probably won't affect the neighbors, but we can't look at it totally that way. We rezoned this with comprehensive rezoning NC4 for a reason, and it abuts A3. We already have some HC2 and some HC3, which were, I believe, probably rezoned because of the existing buildings. And it was proper to do that. And as Mr. Richard says, if not next month, the month after that, we're going to be here for the rest of this piece of property from Tranquility Road to the east, asking for at least an HC, if not an I designation now. And it's too much. There's not a building on it. There's not a business on it that needs to be corrected. And I think what we had and what we did was the right thing at the time, and I don't see a compelling reason to change it.
Is there any further discussion or comments by the commission? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Drum and a second by Mr. Willie to approve. Please vote. The motion is denied. Yes.
Yes. No.
No, no.
No, he can vote if he wants.
Yes.
Do we have
Is
to
there
now make a
another?
motion
Is
to
there
deny?
another? Just, we need a motion.
Move to deny.
Mr. Matthews makes a motion to deny.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davis. Any further discussion? Please vote. Yeah. The motion to deny carries.
Thank you.
Next case, ZC 15-01-005, existing zoning A1 Suburban District, proposed zoning PF1 Public Facilities District, 10.13 acres. The petitioner is Michael Shields. The owner is the state of Louisiana. Representative Alex Miller. Parcel is located on the west side of Louisiana Highway 1083, south of Louisiana Highway 40, Ward 5, District 6. Staff?
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan calls for the area to be developed with residential and agricultural uses. Staff does not have any objections to the request, considering that the purpose of the PF1 zoning district is to provide for the location of governmental and other institutional uses to the public. Note the site is proposed to be developed with a cell tower. Staff recommends PF1 be approved.
Is there anyone that would like to speak on behalf?
Good evening, gentlemen, ma'am. My name is Alex Miller. I live at 1416 Stillwater Drive, Mandeville, Louisiana, 70471. I am the project manager for Motorola that is overseeing this entire project it's a collaborative effort between the parish, St. Tammany Parish, and the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office. So this overall system takes the Sheriff's Office standalone system and ties it to the state system, Louisiana Wireless Information Network, otherwise known as ELWIN. Just some key facts on ELWIN. You got over 125 towers throughout the state, over 73,000 radio users on the state. It's by far the largest in the nation. There's roughly about 10 million push-to-talks from EMS, police, fire, on a monthly basis. So this overall project encompasses using 8 tower sites, one in Abita, Lacombe, Blonde, Covington, Pearl River, Slidell, Talashique, and the proposed site here at Waldheim. This site is utilizing land that is being not so much donated by the state of Louisiana, but through a memorandum of understanding between the state of Louisiana, DPS, Department of Public Safety, and the St. Tammany Sheriff's Office. This site will allow the parish and the Sheriff's Office to utilize this location at no cost, which is a huge cost savings to the parish and to the Sheriff's Office. If you currently have any questions.
Thank you. If you have, please fill out a speaker card. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Anyone wish to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I close it to the public, bring it to the commission. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, Mr. Shields, is it?
No, sir. Alex Miller, Mr. Shields is not able to make it.
Oh, okay. Mr. Miller, how tall is the tower going to be?
450 feet, sir. Now, I would like to say, Mr. Davis, that there was an existing tower site there. Roughly about, I believe, 15 years ago. It was a 400-foot tower.
Right.
We're looking to utilize roughly the same footprint, not in the exact same location, to reduce the environmental impact, cut down less trees, that kind of thing.
I see the existing slab. Is the existing slab looking at going to be further south, more into the middle of the property?
It's going to be more to, if I remember correctly, kind of, and Helen, correct me if I'm wrong on the map, I believe it's what, to the east? I believe, sir, it was to the east.
To the east? The only reason I'm asking is I know in the past, we've always looked at these cell towers, and we always would like to have them, if they did fall down, they would fall on your property, right?
Well, correct, sir, and we did go through the Board of Adjusters meeting, and the way the tower is designed is that it would fall on itself. It would not fall down this way. There's a cutoff point that it would basically collapse on itself.
Oh, great, okay.
And one clarification, this is not per se like a cellular use tower.
Right.
This tower is strictly for public safety.
Thank you.
Ms. Casbon.
It's the whole 10 acres will encompass and
No, ma'am, it's just the way that the footprint with a guide tower, you have guy
You have
anchors
to
that have
have
to
the-
kind of
the
spread
weight.
out, but it won't occupy the entire 10 acres.
and we'll have, y'all will have the protection, the fencing.
Yes, ma'am,
and
absolutely.
everything that's in place that we have on the others.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Casabon, second by Mr. Davis. Mr. Matthews.
One of my questions, I think Ms. Casabon answered. I just want to reiterate. You need the entire 10 acres because of the guy wires?
Yes, sir. The massive footprint, it's not so much that we're going to occupy every 10 acres, but the footprint is going to spread out to encompass a large
And
portion.
Is this designed to withstand a Category 5 hurricane?
Yes, sir. The tower is rated for 130 mile per hour wind load with 3 mile per hour gust, which has shown to withstand winds that were roughly at a Category 5 hurricane.
Okay, so it really needs all that, yeah, okay. All right, that answers my questions fully, thank you.
Roger that, sir.
Is there any other discussion? If not, we have a motion by Ms. Casabon and a second by Mr. Davis to approve. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. ZC 15-01-006, existing zoning A4 Single-Family Residential District and A3 Suburban District. Proposed zoning PF1 Public Facilities District. 74.46 acres. The parcel is located on the south side of Louisiana Highway 36, east of Otis Road, Ward 6, District 11. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential and agricultural uses. Staff does not have any objections to the request, considering that the purpose of the PF1 zoning district is to provide for the location of governmental and other institutional uses to the public. I'd like to note that a portion of this site is currently developed with the St. Tammany Parish Animal Services Department building and a cell tower. So at this time, staff would like to recommend approval.
Is anyone here to speak in support?
Mr. Chairman, this property is owned by St. Tammany Parish government.
We can have a government
she's
official
speaking.
speak as a petitioner.
She'll be the speaker.
I mean, you're the representative.
She's the official.
Would anyone like to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, I close it to the public and bring it back to the commission. Mr. Matthews.
Just one question, PF1, does that allow cell towers?
Yes, it does. It's not listed, but it's listed under the 8.01, the requirements. If you go under the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance, the
Okay, and
I'm pulling it up for you if you want, but it's under
please.
supplemental requirements. 8.01. The letter A like apple, N like Nancy. And it states that towers will be allowed in the following zoning districts, which NC, PBC, HC, the I zoning, the MD, the PF, the ED, AT.
Okay, it specifically says cell towers are allowed in PF zoning.
Yes, sir.
That's what I needed to hear, thank you.
Mr. Randolph. Ms. Casabon.
A motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion by Ms. Casabon, second by Mr. Davis to approve. Please vote. Motion carries. ZC 15-01-007, existing zoning A4 Single-Family Residential District, proposed zoning A4 Single-Family Residential District, and manufactured housing overlay. 7.47 acres. The petitioners Parish Council by motion of November 6th, 2014. Location, the parcel is located on the south side of Powell Drive, west of Grace Drive, Ward 9, District 14. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with single-family residences, including manufactured homes. Staff has no objection to the request for a manufactured housing overlay, as there are several mobile homes in the vicinity, and the request fits with the existing land use of the area. Staff recommends approval.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor, or is the landowner here?
I'm not aware that the landowner is present here. I know, but I'm aware that they've been contacted.
And how were they contacted?
Mr. Smith contacted them. However, we don't have official notice at this time.
Mr. Hand, what is the proper procedure for notifying someone that they are zoning change?
This is my understanding that, based upon what Sydney has brought to our attention, that if it's less than 10 parcels, that certified mail needs to be sent.
Well, we may have to postpone this
Yes.
this request to make sure that it's less than 10 that is greater.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Matthews.
We've discussed this quite a bit in the past, and I think the consensus of the commission has been when nobody shows up, it's very difficult for us to proceed. And I think we have, if not made it a rule, we've made it up for discussion that we would seriously consider postponing, no matter what the notice was, if nobody shows up to answer any questions we have. And I would therefore make a motion to postpone, not only for the fact that we may not have properly noticed, but no one shows up, so we should postpone.
Mr. Matthews. We have a motion by Mr. Matthews to postpone until next month, Mr. Matthews? Till next month. It is seconded by Mr. Lauren. Is there any discussion? Seeing none other, please vote. Motion to postpone passes. ZC 15-01-009, text change. Ordinance to amend the St. Tammany Parish Unified Development Code, Volume 1, Zoning, Article 2, Definitions, to add the definition of breezeway. Staff?
The objectives of this text change is to provide a definition for the term breezeway, as you can see here. The reason for the definition is because the construction is to clarify when the construction of a breezeway between two separate structures become a single structure or when it remains two separate structures. And as we can see in this definition here, that's what the purpose of the definition is, to clarify.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on the matter? Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Carlo Hernandez. You know, I hope everyone has read it. I mean, it's pretty short, but to me, it's honestly, it's confusing to me. And let me just read it for the public, and you tell me what you think. A covered walkway open on at least two sides from the eaves of the roof to the ground, connecting a main structure with an accessory structure on the same building site, period. A breezeway less than 10 feet in width will not be sufficient connection from two distinct spaces to be considered a single structure, period. That's confusing to me. The covering must be greater than 10 feet in width or be connected by a fully enclosed structure with access to both spaces. Now, period. Now that's it. And I guess the confusing thing to me, although the first sentence is not real clear, because I've read a number of breezeway definitions on this, let me tell you. And I have a recommended one, but I won't go into that one because it's different. It's vastly different from this one. But in this one, the second sentence, it says a breezeway less than 10 feet in width will not be sufficient connection from two distinct spaces to be considered a single structure. Now, two distinct spaces. Now, you know, the term space, I thought to myself, okay, well, let me see where it appears in the definitions. The term space does not appear. Parking space does appear in the thing, and so does public use space also appears on the thing. But the word space, so I'm wondering why, if we were trying to deal with structures, why not use two distinct structures to be considered a single structure on there? Why the use of the word space? And then again, in the last sentence, again, the word spaces appears. And I guess it was a little confusing to me, but maybe not to you. And if anyone wants, I mean, I could email you the definition I found, which I thought was a pretty good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Anyone else care to speak on this case? Hearing none, I close it to the public and I bring it to the commission. Mr. Lauren.
Again, I have a question for Mr. Hand. When we do what we're doing here and we change a definition like this, we don't intentionally set up to cause problems like we did when we did the comprehensive rezoning, and that poor little lady had to come in here and ask for the property to be rezoned. But you could be changing two buildings into one building, which would change when they advertise under beam. Okay? If she ever went to sell it. You follow what I'm saying? By changing this, what do we do with all the houses that are out there now? I'm not worried about the ones going forward. The architects would have to worry about that when they draw up the plans. But what about the houses that are out there now that could be caught up because we've changed the definition?
We're not changing the definition, we're adding a definition. It does not exist at this point.
Okay.
And basically it's a situation that happens quite often is you either have an existing house and an accessory structure, as an example, and they want to join the two. And it becomes a problem because we need to define when it becomes one structure and when it remains two separate structure. Because it affects the setback. And so that's why it's important to define it. But also when you have a new house and you have a garage or an accessory structure or a shed, then when does it become one structure or when does it remain two structures? And
Let me give a more concrete example. All of our insurance homeowners policies covers main structures and separate structures. Okay? We put this definition in here now. Is there a possibility that that could affect insurance policies going forward?
It would depend on the wording in the policy. The insurance policy is a private contract between you and the insurance carrier. So it depends on how they define an accessory structure versus a main structure.
They won't rely on what we say.
Not necessarily. They could, if they put it in the contract, that they're going to rely on the governmental regulation, but normally they don't. They would put it in specifically to make sure that it's not ambiguous in any way, and that they write the policy, so it's going to be interpreted according to the way they write it. But if you have a situation where it becomes one structure, then what you've created is the ability of the homeowner under our current ordinances to add an accessory building. So, I mean, that's what the result of this change will be, is that there may be structures out there that we're looking at now that may be a main structure and an accessory building, but if it's got a breezeway that fits this designation, and then we now look at it as one structure, that means they can come in and get a permit for an accessory building up to 1,000 square feet.
Oh, they could add a breezeway that meets this definition.
Correct, and make it one structure, and then get an accessory building.
We solve one problem and create another.
Mr. Davis.
I kind of know this area a little well because living out on Bayou Lacombe, there's a lot of homes that have like mother and grandfather homes out on the bayous, and they're connected between the two by a porch and a cupboard. But I have a question. I think the second sentence in this definition is completely confusing. Wouldn't it be better to delete that whole section of that sentence, and then on the third sentence, just clearly state the 10-foot in width breezeway may have a covering greater than 10 feet in width or be connected by a fully enclosed structure with access to both spaces, and leave it alone? It's just, there's some wordage problems in here.
There might be some clarification to do. However, the second sentence is to explain that if the breezeway is less than 10 feet in width, then it will not be considered a single structure. So unless if you can integrate somehow the two, we can't delete the second sentence.
Okay, so you're not saying that the breezeway has to be at least 10 feet in width?
No, what we're saying here is that
gotcha.
if the breezeway, if you have a house and you have the shed,
Right.
and you're trying to connect the two, and the breezeway is less than 10,
Right.
then it will remain two separate structures. But
Gotcha.
if it's wider or 10 foot wider, or wider, then it will become one structure.
Gotcha, okay. That, the way you said it, that's the way it should be put down, to be honest. I understand now, I mean,
Mr. Matthews.
I spent a lot of time in the last several years, I was in practice reading state laws to see how they affected my employer. And a lot of them were very confusing. And quite frankly, I think this one is too. I think possibly what we're running into is what happens to a lot of us, and it's happened to me a number of times. What I write, I clearly understand. Nobody else does. And that's happened to me more than once. I think that's what we have here. I don't know whether you wrote it or somebody else wrote it, Ellen, but the person that wrote it, I'm sure, clearly understands what this means. I don't. Evidently, Jimmy didn't. Carlo didn't. And I'm concerned. Carlo seems to indicate that there is another definition that maybe has been used in other areas or other regions or other jurisdictions that may be clearer. I'd like for him to provide staff with that, and let's see if we can clear this up. Because I read this, I don't know, over and over and over, and every time I read it, I got a little more confused in exactly where it was going. So I would like to postpone this and have the staff come back possibly with a little clearer, more understandable definition if we could. Motion to postpone.
I'll second that motion. I understand what you mean, but I'd rather it say exactly what you mean. So if you don't mind, if it's not going to cause any great harm, and unless we have to amend it on the fly now, I second that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Matthews to postpone till next month, second by Mr. Richard. Any further discussion? Mr. Randolph.
Yes, sir. We're talking about and referring to the width of, quote, the breezeway. There's no consideration of the length of the breezeway? I'm just asking.
No.
Okay.
No, because most of the time, if you're trying to connect, an accessory structure in the house, most of the time is because you're trying to get from one to the other to be covered, from the rain or, from the rain most of the time. But so you're not gonna be able to build a breezeway that is gonna be 40 foot long, or you're gonna have to put some supports on each side. But most of the time, we don't really necessarily have a problem with the length of it.
Mr. Davis.
I have one more question. This came up. Okay, so the person designs this breezeway, has a breezeway between his existing house to maybe an accessory structure, and closes all sides. So it's now seen as one structure. Is now the person that owns this one structure, is this tax rate based on the total square footage now? Including the breezeway?
It's possible that it may be reassessed as just one structure. But they would have to
Now
apply.
I'm confused.
they
Think
would-
about that.
They would have to apply for a building permit and meet the setback requirements.
But still.
Yeah, I don't know how the assessor's
Just saying, I
office addresses that.
If it's considered one
Good.
structure, and that one
That'd probably be a
structure
good,
is
good question for the tax assessor's office.
Anyway, I'm just thinking about it.
Mr. Matthews.
Postpone
Yeah.
it, postpone it.
Quickly, what Helen just said is one of the reasons that these things have to be written clearer. Generally, usually, they're done this way. Well, you can't write for generally and usually, and most of the time, what I've seen, you have to write for whatever. And this clearly doesn't take into consideration whatever. There's nothing in here about supports. You could have a 100-foot breezeway if that's what you wanted to build.
Well, if the commission wishes to add, something referring to the length of it, you're welcome to do so.
It's a little
Well,
too confusing right now.
Rather than coming and picking and choosing and trying to add little bits and pieces, this needs to be rewritten.
We have a motion by Mr. Matthews to postpone until next month, second by Mr. Richard. Please vote. Motion to postpone carries. Is there any other old business for the commission? Is there any new business for the commission? I have a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Davis and second by Mr. Matthews.